Hey guys, welcome back to Reserved Investments on YouTube. This is part 2 of my 2,500 subscriber Q&A, and spoiler alert, there is going to be a part 3. I thought I could cover all this content within 2 videos. Unfortunately, I got a lot of last-minute questions that I do want to put into a third subsequent series in this particular Q&A. So part 3 will launch in the next few days. To be fair to all my subscribers, to all my viewers who do not like the Q&A videos that I do, I will also be releasing original content in between those segments. So rest assured, just because I'm doing Q&As, it's not going to pull me away from releasing original content on this particular channel. That being said, we're going to get right into the questions because I have been asked a lot of in-depth questions once again that I want to take the time to answer for all of you out there. First question, Sean, YouTube investors, speculators love to boast how they've bought and sold the right things at the right time. Isn't that amazing? All those hype-driven channels telling you how much money they're making. Wink, wink. However, we all know it's an impossibility for someone to buy and sell hundreds, if not thousands of items and not take a few hits along the way. Can you go into your biggest losses, whether it be the result of bad luck, bad speculation, or making the wrong call? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to cite several examples. First, back in 1995, when I graduated from high school, remember guys, I started learning the antiques and collectibles trade at the age of 12. Well, back in 1995, I was roughly 18 years of age. eBay, it was then called Auction Web, had just came on the scene. And I spent a lot of my time buying and selling pop culture items. And to be fair, I made a ton of money doing it. But a lot of my mentors were up my proverbial ass at that particular time because I was ignoring all the information that they taught me on high-end antiques and the like. Well, looking back, one of the major mistakes I made where I could have even made even more money would have been if I would have took the plunge at that particular time and delved hardcore into antiques at that particular time and focused on both antiques and collectibles. That being said, I wasn't confident in my own ability back then, and as a result, I delayed getting into hardcore, higher-end traditional antiques until literally I was 26, 27 years of age. So there was like literally almost a 10-year gap before I even started to utilize the knowledge that I had learned about in the antiques trade on making money in the antiques trade for myself. So that's something interesting about me. Sometimes I have a problem where I doubt my own ability, and it does cost me money in the long run. So I have my own insecurities, guys, just like everybody else out there. I don't claim to know it all. I don't claim to be overconfident. There are mistakes that I make. Another 2 examples I can give you. Back when eBay was rising, I was investing in Pez dispensers at that particular time, and I only got to cash out 50% of my holdings before the proverbial bubble burst. This is unlike what I first saw happening with vintage video games. At that particular time, I was also making a ton of money in pre-Nintendo video games like Atari, Intellivision, ColecoVision. Well, I saw the writing on the wall right around 2003, 2004 that I knew that bubble was going to pop. So I was able to liquidate all my pre-Nintendo holdings before that occurred and turn a profit on those items and then walk away from that market. Well, I didn't do that well with Pez dispensers, and I got stuck holding roughly, I think at the time it was like $5,000 worth of Pez dispensers that had decreased substantially on the market as a whole that I ended up liquidating over the next 5 years at a loss. Another mistake I made was back in 2008, 2010, right around the financial crisis. Contemporary marbles, actually vintage machine-made marbles is probably a better definition of what I was buying, were starting to heat up at certain auction houses. I'm not going to name the auction houses because they have a right to protect their business. They also have a right to engage in speculation and advertising of these items. Well, I bought in to a lot of vintage machine-made marbles produced by Acro Agate, Christensen, Peltier, and the like, and I was paying a substantial amount of money for these marbles. Now, there's 2 parts to the marble collecting realm that you got to understand to get the full effect of what I'm about to tell you. There's antique marbles, which are handmade marbles that premiered in the 1800s, early 1900s, that have a massive following in the antique side of the trade. On the other end of the spectrum is vintage machine-made marbles that were made in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s by companies like Acro Agate, Christensen, Peltier, and a slew of other manufacturers. Well, the problem was I was investing in both categories, but I was weighted too much in vintage machine-made marbles. And when the bubble burst, I was left holding a lot of marbles that would have sold at that particular time for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, to the point where if I sold them today, I would take a 50% loss on them. Now, the only bright spot in this is the fact that the antique marbles that I bought and still have in my display case upstairs, if I sold them, I would make 2 to 3 times my money in today's market because those marbles appreciated quite nicely over the years because, again, they're true traditional investment grade antiques, and a lot of people are drawn to that side of the market if they're investing in antique glass. So the lesson that I learned was a lot of these items, even if they are from the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, they can be very speculative. Even if they're on the antique side of the equation, they operate almost like collectibles. So that was a good lesson for me to have. So again, I welcome the fact that I did lose that money because with losing that money comes an education, guys. And that's what makes me a better consultant. It's what makes me a better collector. It's what makes me a better investor going forward. Excellent question. Thank you for asking. Next question. Sean, when you talk about Magic the Gathering, could you possibly cover artist prints as well? The answer is yes. The reason why I haven't really done that in the past too much is because a lot of my earlier videos on Magic the Gathering investing and collecting were just primers. They were meant to just offer my feedback on if somebody wanted to enter the market and invest in those particular collectibles, how they should start. I haven't really done any advanced material on Magic the Gathering as of yet. Same thing with Pokemon. Those videos are in the works. And yes, I will be commenting on original art, artist proofs, and the like in those particular videos because they are a prominent part of the collecting community. You go on to state, I would be curious to see if there is any crossover into art collecting with Magic the Gathering art and/or artist prints. This is something where a lot of you are not going to like my answer. Please forgive me, guys. Again, I'm red pilling you. You're going to get frustrated with my response. You cannot compare the high-end art market to pop culture art collecting. So there's a lot of people out there that like to compare an original piece of comic art from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s to something like the Mona Lisa, or an original piece of Magic the Gathering art from the 1990s to a very rare painting from Picasso or Monet or one of the greats. I'm sorry, guys. Nobody in the antiques and collectibles trade is taking anybody seriously who is comparing a piece of comic art or an original Magic the Gathering piece of artwork to the Mona Lisa. Pop culture can never, ever compare on par with overall historic objects and artifacts, which is what the Mona Lisa is. In fact, a lot of that rhetoric comes from dealers and auction houses. If you talk to any well-versed consultant, any well-versed expert in the antiques and collectibles trade, if you bring up that the Mona Lisa is on par with comic art or Magic the Gathering art or other pop culture related art, they're going to roll your eyes. As much as I love Andy Warhol, he is not on par with Da Vinci, with Picasso, with Monet, and the like. There are different segments of the market as a whole. Again, if you are invested in comic books, comic art, Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, video games, toys, you are on the pop culture side of the equation. That's not to say you cannot make money in that market. I want to be very clear. You can. We've all seen it. But when compared to traditional antiques, historic artifacts, historic levels of art, items of that nature, the comparison does not compute. Let me just word it that way. And I'm sorry if I've busted anyone's bubble out there. I'm just being 100% honest on this channel. If this triggers you, feel free to unsubscribe. Feel free to leave me a nasty comment. I'm not going to distort the truth just because it bothers someone. Next question. Sean, do you have any interest on the prestige wine and spirits industry? The answer is yes. Full disclosure, This is one of the videos that I actually had premiered on this channel several months back. I then pulled out at the last minute because at that particular time, people were calling me an elitist. They were telling me that I'm too fine-tuned into a lot of these high-end collecting markets. If you guys recall, that was back when I did a video on Birkin bags. I brought up Rolex watches, and a lot of people accused me of being very eccentric, very elitist, very narcissistic. So I said, you know what? Now is not the time to do a video on wine collecting or whiskey collecting and the like. I will tell you, I have a video planned for this because usually when I pull a video, it goes back in rotation. Right now, I'm 60 videos behind on this channel as it is, but there will be a video coming that talks about how, if you want to, you can get into wine collecting and investing and the like. Do I recommend it? Yes and no. It is a very sophisticated market. It is a market where you really have to have a lot of money. You have to understand what moves that market, why certain vintages are worth money, why others are not. You have to know how to store wine properly. That's a big one that I see people miss. You also have to be prepared to pay exorbitant fees for shipping, transportation, handling, and in some cases, auction fees when you go to buy and when you go to sell. The market for wine collecting is not only sophisticated, it is also fragmented. A few auction houses pretty much control that market. As a whole, in that video, I will go into the ins and outs and what you have to look for if you do want to invest in wine and or spirits. There's also certain laws that govern that. There's tax laws. It can be a mess. It can be a nightmare if you don't know what you're doing. So that video, I will give you enough information just to be a little bit dangerous. And that can sometimes be a bad thing on YouTube. But I am going to do a video on it because it's something that I am passionate about. If you ask any woman that I've ever dated, she did, if she dated me for any length of time, had access to expensive bottles of wine because I am a wine connoisseur. I'm going to leave it at that. Next question. Sean, can you go over examples of pop culture collectibles as if they existed in the 1700, 1800, or 1900s? The answer is yes, and this kind of ties into the question that I got asked about Magic the Gathering artist proofs. Again, this was a video that I did put into the works. I did not release it on this channel because it goes into the history of pop culture collecting. And the way that I did that video, I want to go back and rework it because most people don't know this. Pop culture collecting at the time, meaning back when pop culture came out originally, it was seen as something to educate the lower classes. A lot of the wealthy, a lot of the noblemen, a lot of the elites looked down upon pop culture. Now, in the 1950s, at least in the United States and also in the rest of the industrialized world, pop culture exploded in mass media hype and collectability and overall exposure. That being said, guys, and here's the caveat. If you look at pop culture and pop culture collecting from the 1950s on up, you're going to notice that pop culture goes in a traditional format where it peaks, then dies out. That's why when you guys come to me and ask my advice on Elvis Presley collecting, or Marilyn Monroe collecting, or Beatles collecting, or Western toy collectibles that were popular in the 80s, all that stuff is dying out because the generations that grew up with that, mainly baby boomers, are starting to die out. I hate to say that, but eventually a lot of those collecting categories will eventually disappear from the trade altogether. They will most likely go on to become curiosities. Like right now, if you want to get into the market for collecting vintage Western toy collectibles that were made in the 1950s, 1960s, like based on Gunsmoke or Bonanza, or what is it, Hopalong Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or the Lone Ranger, all that stuff right now is a curiosity. If you remember, several years back, Disney tried to re-release Lone Ranger. It starred Johnny Depp. Well, the movie was a flop. Younger generations are not flocking to Westerns like older baby boom generations were. As a result, those markets are dying out. That's the way pop culture works. It's very difficult for certain pop culture categories to get multi-generational appeal. And that's what you need for a lot of these markets to take hold, to get on fire, and to also become established markets, not only in the antique side of the trade, but just to be established on the collectible side of the trade. And that's what we're struggling with at present time. Comic books look like they may cross over. I'll be very honest. Comic books in certain cases are 80 years old in the year 2020. If you look at when the original Action Comics 1 and Detective Comics 27 came out, we're talking 80 years ago. Well, in 20 more years, they're going to be considered antiques. We'll have to see how the market responds to them over the next 10 to 20 years to see if they do become a viable market in the antique side of the trade. So that's why I caution people about pop culture collecting, about putting all your money in pop culture artifacts, because you constantly have to have your finger on the pulse, because at any time, those markets can change. They are way too speculative. You cannot build wealth if you invest all your money in speculative assets. Why do you think when you guys reach out to me for investing advice, I tell you, put the bulk of your financial portfolio in mutual funds, index-based funds, ETFs, and the like that track an index, whether it be the total stock market index, the S&P 500 index, total bond. Do it that way. Then when you get to six figures, if you want to start speculating on individual stocks, do it then with a little bit of money. Don't bet the farm. You must become financially established. The collectibles market works the same way. Some of you guys, I hate to say it, again, I'm going to red pill some of you. You're doing it all wrong. You are chasing the next big thing. Then you're chasing the next big thing after that thing. Then you're chasing the next big thing after those things, and you're trying to build a portfolio of Fugazi. It is not going to work. You must become financially established. Then go after speculative assets. And you will never, ever get financially established if you go from one speculative asset to another. It doesn't work that way, guys. There's no shortcut. There's no free lunch. I assure you. I'm sitting here at the age of 43. I'm going to be 44 in December. I'm not lying to you. There are no shortcuts to creating long-term wealth. I'm sorry. I wish there were. If there were, I would gladly give them to you all for free, because I look at the world right now and a tear comes to my eye when I look at wealth and equality and the amount of wealth and equality that is taking over the United States. And I would love to help any way that I can. That's partially why I created this YouTube channel, believe it or not, guys. But there is no shortcut to any of this stuff. So I am going to revisit this topic in another separate video, full disclosure. But yes, there are pop culture references from the 1700s, the 1800s, and the 1900s that I can do a video on to show you how irrelevant a lot of those pop culture items have become over the years, guys. Use caution. Next question. Sean, how do you feel about the future of collecting music CDs? I know some heavy metal music that is pretty collectible, but the format overall and its future, what are your thoughts? Again, guys, I like vinyl records. Vinyl records are analog in most cases. They're not digital, and they are the music the way the artist originally intended. Now, when I talk about collecting vinyl records, I'm talking about first printings. I'm not talking about the digital remasters or the speculative colored stuff that's coming out in the year 2020, where they're only releasing 1,000, 2,000 copies and people are buying it thinking it's going to be the next $5,000 item. It kind of reminds me of what's happening with limited run games right now. Those items are using mass-produced scarcity. I'm talking about organic collectability. Now, you can argue certain CDs do have organic collectability. I don't argue about that. The problem is it's an esoteric market. There are certain CDs that are worth money on the secondary market. Again, I don't doubt that. The problem is, compared to vinyl record collecting, CD collecting is a fraction of that at best. That's the problem you're up against if you get involved in that market. It's no different when the people reach out to me and go, Sean, I want to collect DVDs, or I want to collect Blu-ray movies. Those markets are also very esoteric and they're quite risky. A lot of manufacturers are re-releasing popular movies again and again in collector edition box sets. That's having a profound impact on the value of the earlier releases going forward. You must be very careful if you're getting involved in any of those markets. They are not on par with video games. They're not on par with comic books. They're not on par with Magic the Gathering. They're not on par with Pokemon. Those markets are too esoteric. Use caution if you are getting involved in them. Next question. Sean, could you comment on the overall market for collecting lanterns? Thank you for this question. Yes, I do like early railroad lanterns, and now that I've said that, I just know that I lost half my viewing audience because they're running in the other direction because they want nothing to do with those type of traditional antiques. The market, to be fair, and I want to clarify this, the market has taken a couple of hits along the way. Railroad lantern collecting isn't what it used to be, but there are some lanterns there that are always sought after that can be considered good traditional antiques, if not good overall investments in the antique side of the trade. I will be doing more videos on that stuff. As I've said before, I'm literally 60 to 70 videos behind on this channel, and as a result, I haven't had time to branch out into more esoteric collecting categories. I can tell you right now, if I did release a video on collecting lanterns, it would probably only get between 200 to 500 views, which I don't mind doing at all. That's not the point of me releasing videos. But overall, it's something that I'm going to get to in probably the months coming up rather than the weeks. So you're going to have some time to wait. But yes, I do like that market. There's a lot of interesting developments in that market. And overall, I think it would be fascinating for me to talk about that because some of my other younger viewers and the people that are on the collectible side of the equation, I think they can learn a lot from learning about the history, the price appreciation, and in some cases, the price depreciation of some of the early and older railroad lanterns out there. But I am a fan of that market. Thank you for mentioning it. Next question. How do you stay organized and keep track of the value of all your holdings as well as your performance in terms of return? Well, first of all, if it's something on the antique side of the equation, coins, currency, firearms, edged weapons, traditional antiques, historical documents, collectible first edition books, that's something that I am confident in, so I don't do a lot of price research on those items on a regular basis, unless if it's something that I'm looking to buy in those collecting categories. So in other words, my six-figure coin collection, my six-figure currency collection, I let that ride. That's sitting in a safety deposit box. I don't research the values of those items on a regular basis because I have confidence in those collecting markets. Now, when it comes to pop culture collectibles, that's where I'm a little bit different. For instance, for comic book collecting, I use GP Analysis, Graded Point Analysis. It's a subscription service you can subscribe to for like $9 or $10 a month, or you can pay a yearly fee. And it charts the value, or at least last sale prices, of certain CGC graded comic books. One caveat with GPA analysis, not every dealer, not every auction house reports into their sales figures. So you have to take it as a grain of salt and just understand it's more of a barometer rather than a factual facthood in the business. If you can use it as such, it works as a great guide. For anything more speculative, when we talk about graded Magic the Gathering cards, Pokemon cards, or even video games, I use eBay. I will use auction houses if they are listing individual Magic cards that are graded, or Pokemon cards and the like. I will use PWCC auction listings on eBay if I want to get a gauge of those markets and how they're doing. So it just depends on what market you're looking at. If it's toys, action figures, I will use eBay. I will use Hakes. I will even use Heritage Auctions if they do have certain Star Wars figures or other AFA-related items listed. That can at least give me a gauge of how the market is doing or where it's going. There are a lot of esoteric auction houses. I've mentioned this before. Philip Weiss is a great auction house out of New York that has a lot of pop culture collectibles from time to time. I like looking over their auction history, as well as even Morphe Auctions. Morphe Auctions is out of Adamstown, Pennsylvania. They're known for high-end antiques, but they do from time to time get pop culture collectibles, toys, comic books, other items that I can use their end auction results to chart the value of. I spend most of my time researching prices in two main areas in the antiques and collectibles trade. On traditional antiques for clients or items that I want to buy, or on the collectibles side, because the collectibles side is very volatile and very speculative. So I spend the most amount of my time researching prices on this collectible side of the trade more than the antiques. I know that that's surprising for some of you out there, but you got to understand collectibles move at the speed of light. That's why a lot of people are drawn to those markets, because they're extremely speculative. They go up and down. Well, if you buy right and you sell right, you can make money. However, at some point, a day of reckoning is going to come for a lot of those collecting categories. And that's what people need to be prepared for. And that's why I do this channel. Great question. Next question. Hey, Sean, I don't have an eye for art. Let me stop you right there. Yes, you do. Everybody has an eye for art. The only difference between you and an art critic out there is the fact that somebody values his opinion more than yours. I'm going to be very honest, guys. It doesn't matter if you have no interest in art history. Doesn't matter if you have an art history degree. Doesn't matter if you're like me, a consultant in the antiques and collectibles trade who's educated in this stuff. People still, if they ask my opinion on art, they take it with a grain of salt. Everybody has an eye for art. I don't care who you are. Whether or not the market listens to your opinion on art, that's another story. If they do listen to your opinion, you could become a market maker and you can make a lot of money in that particular market. You know, one thing that I like about Andy Warhol, not only was he a contemporary artist who made fun of his own craft, he also was a very good trendsetter, where he would really set the market ablaze just by giving credit to other artists, other entertainers, other people out there. And that's why I have a lot of respect for him. Just a side note. But overall, don't ever let me hear you say you don't have an eye for art. I don't care who you are. Everybody out there, their opinion matters. They do have an eye for art. It's just, unfortunately, for most of us, the vast majority of collectors, dealers, investors, and other art critics are not going to listen to our opinion. Like even me, if I would do a YouTube video talking about Jackson Pollock or Picasso or Monet, and I would tell you what I like and what I don't like, most people wouldn't care, because the opinion of Sean Cermak, at the end of the day, for somebody who wants to spend $10 million, $100 million, $150 million on a painting, doesn't matter that much. They only care what the general public, what the general art critics think of that particular piece. Sorry to go off on a rant there, but I just wanted to clarify. You all have an eye for art, I assure you, even if you don't realize it. I see sculptures of video game or comic characters going for large numbers on retail sites. Does this fall within the art spectrum? Unfortunately, no. Again, this is pop culture art. It is not equivalent to fine art. It's not even equivalent to decorative art. That doesn't mean it's not collected. That doesn't mean you can't make money on it. That doesn't mean that people don't appreciate it. I'm just stating a lot of you guys are being fed lies by a lot of pop culture dealers on the comic side of the equation, on the video game side of the equation, on the toy side of the equation, where they're telling you this stuff is art. It should be treated as such. Unfortunately, the high-end art market disagrees. And going back to my opinion on telling you that you have an eye for art, that's all that matters. And that's the way it's going to matter going forward. So you really can't compare a lot of these items within the investment grade art market overall. That being said, you're asking how do they fare investment-wise? Some go up in value. In my opinion, you are better off latching on to the speculative hype if you're going to buy into this market. Meaning, if you know the market really well and you want to buy like a first four figure or some of these other hot toys, some of these items that you know there's going to be a lot of collector demand. If you buy into it and you flip it for a profit, that's where you can make your money. Now, to the unfortunate person paying a premium for some of these items, if you're attempting to hold them long term, you're probably not going to make that much a return on investment, because this market is extremely speculative. And again, it is not on par with high-end investment grade art. Do not confuse that. Good question. Next question. Sean, Bandai's new Dragon Ball Super collectible card game has recently seen a surge by collectors and was even featured by PSA on their monthly magazine. Given the success Dragon Ball has had as a franchise over the decades, do you see any potential for investing in this new game, given how it flew under the radar the first couple of years, or does none of that matter because it's new? Thank you so much. I would be cautious with the Dragon Ball card game. To be fair, the two top-tier collectible card games, as you all know, are Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. Now, I do know there's other collectible card games out there, Flesh and Blood, which is selling fairly well in the secondary market at present time. Then you have Force of Will, you have Vanguard, Buddy Fight, all these other products. In my opinion, they are very speculative. So I would use caution on these items. If you want to buy one booster box of each and put it away with the understanding that it could very well go, I wouldn't say to zero, but close to zero, then do that. Take the risk. Would I recommend it? No. Am I investing in Dragon Ball the collectible card game for either the short term and the long term? The answer is no. Could I be wrong about that? Could it eventually be something? Yes, but I don't think it's ever going to have the clout that Magic the Gathering and Pokemon currently have. So if you are devoting funds and you are trying to, quote unquote, invest in the collectible card game market, why would you divert funds to Dragon Ball when you could use that money to invest in Magic the Gathering or Pokemon? You know, I don't much agree with this philosophy, but even if you bought modern era Magic the Gathering products and you analyzed the market and you said, you know what, I'm going to get a hold of Zendikar Rising, which is coming out over the next couple of months, you at least have an up chance of Zendikar Rising appreciating in value. With the Dragon Ball collectible card game, I don't know where the value is going to be. I could tell you you'd be better off going after Zendikar or even Ikoria in Magic the Gathering right now. That's going to be a very strong sought-after set when it's discontinued, in my opinion. Or War of the Spark. There's other products that you could devote your money to if you are looking at this from a speculative or investment mindset. That's my advice. Next question. Sean, your videos are pure gold. I'm so glad I found your channel. My question for you is, what's your opinion on Blizzard Collector's Editions, sealed or complete in box? Have Blizzard Collector's Editions reached their ceiling? Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I do not a fan of the Blizzard Collector Box Editions. It's just something that I feel the easy money has already been made. If you want to try to invest in it, I wish you the best. You're on your own. Could they go up in value? The answer is yes. But again, when I analyze that market, the easy money has already been made. As a result, I don't recommend people put money there because it's already an esoteric collecting category. And I know people are going to rip me apart and they're going to say, Sean, you don't understand the popularity of World of Warcraft. You don't understand the popularity of Blizzard. I assure you guys, I do. I've seen it all. I'm in the business day in, day out. I still will tell you, in my opinion, the easy money has already been made. That's my advice to you. Next question. Hey, Sean, thanks for all you do and keeping us informed. Would love you to hear your thoughts on the long-term outlook of limited pop culture movie prints from companies like Mondo and Bottleneck Gallery. Okay, this market is very speculative. I will admit that some of the items that are based on popular movie properties or that have a unique artist attached to them do have some appeal. Whether or not that's long-term remains to be seen. In my opinion, I'm more of a fan of collecting the original movie posters from the era that they came out in. For instance, if you want to collect Jaws, go after an original Jaws movie poster. If you want to collect Psycho from Alfred Hitchcock, go after an original Psycho movie poster. If you want to collect Hellraiser, Dune, go after those particular items in their original form. This is more of a mass-produced market. It does, however, have some collectability because of the fact they are doing unique things with the printings, with the artists, and how they're presenting the material. But I am not convinced over the long-term validity as of yet. Note, my opinion could change on that as time goes on. But at present day, I am not overtly impressed. Next question, and this will be the last question for this particular Q&A. Again, there will be a part 3. Hi, Sean. Love your content. I just want to know what you do to pass the time. Do you play video games, read books? Before the pandemic, I used to love casual and high-end dating. That's something that I was really interested in. I like fine dining. I do like video games. Unfortunately, with my schedule, with consulting, my corporate job, following up on YouTube, doing these videos, writing for Antiques and Auction News, I don't have a lot of time to play video games. I do read a lot of books. Don't get too excited, though. Most of my books that I read are devoted to antiques and collectibles on the one end. On the other end, I read a lot of books on investing. I am hardcore into that. Again, guys, I have a finance background. I love hiking. I love working out. I love extreme sports. You probably wouldn't know that from looking at me, but I do like bungee jumping. I like flying airplanes, believe it or not, which I am taking lessons for. I like jumping out of planes. I like doing crazy shit that I could probably get killed and hurt with. I would love to do deep sea cave diving. Anything like that where there's a certain element of risk, I am really drawn towards that. And I think it's because I have such a structured life. That's why I sometimes get involved in some crazy relationships. More on that in another video. But overall, I do like doing things that keep me active and also keep me intellectually stimulated. So I hope you find that answer appealing. Overall, I tend to have a boring life in the antiques and collectibles trade. A lot of it is dealing with clients and following market trends. Yeah, when I partake in auctions, it can be exciting. But overall, I've said this before, the business of antiques and collectibles, day in, day out, is a little bit boring. The exciting time comes when items achieve new records, when you're helping clients, when you're going after esoteric items of which there's a limited quantity of and bidding gets intense. That's where the excitement comes from. So I hope that answered your question. On a side note, I do like going to conventions. This was before the pandemic. So I love going to Too Many Games convention, coin conventions, comic book conventions, and the like. I love all that stuff. Thank you for watching. I hope you liked part 2. Part 3 will be uploaded within the next few days. If you do like my content, consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks, guys, and have a great night.